Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Well, it's my pleasure today to introduce Reverend Myo-O Habermas-Scher. She practiced with Katagiri Roshi from 1975 until his death in 1990. She also trained for 12 years in the Vipassana tradition. She received Dharma transmission in 2012 from Dokai at Hokyoji. Myo-O is a master movement teacher and teaches somatically based vocal training. In 2021, she retired after 14 years as an interfaith staff chaplain at the University of Minnesota Medical Center, Fairview. She was also a mom and a grandmother of two grandsons, little grandsons. Okay, Myo-O, thank you so much for giving us a talk today.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Okay, good. Well, I noticed that at Clouds they acknowledge the tribes that took care of the land until we showed up. So I want to do that today. And I'll just say that in Minneapolis, in Uptown where I live, I was happy that they renamed Lake Calhoun to Videmakaska. That felt respectful to me. So I want to, when I walk and bike around there, I do imagine it without all the houses and all the everything, and just really appreciate what was here. And around Hokyoji, there's the Sac, the Fox, the Sioux, and the Winnebago tribes were there. And up here is the Anishinaabe and the Dakota. So I want to honor them. So today I'm going to talk about the precepts as the gateway to embodiment. And I'm going to start with a quote from Joy Harjo, who is a wonderful poet, musician, artist, and a member of the, I'm not going to say this right, the Misogi tribe. And she was the poet laureate for a few years in 2019 to 2020, maybe something like that, 2021. I love this. This is from Poet Warrior, a memoir. Watch your mind. Without training, it might run away and leave your heart for the immense human feast set by the thieves of time. Just blow my mind when I read that. Like, wow, I'm going to read that sentence again. Watch your mind. Without training, it might run away and leave your heart for the immense human feast set by the thieves of time. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to just fix my light so I can see better. Okay. So one of the main things that drew me to Zen practice was that it was practice, because I understood practice. Um, I had been still practicing all my life, practically since I was 10, to train as a dancer and a singer. So what most interested me at the beginning in 1975 and still interests me is what is it to embody that practice so that it spontaneously becomes the way I live? To practice something subtle requires some support. Usually, sorry, we don't practice something we are training in just anywhere or in any old way. For instance, we don't practice the piano in the middle of the street. That would not work. I'm sorry, I'm going to cough, I think. Heard it? Okay. There are ways to practice that are given to us by our teachers. We follow those rules until the practice goes beyond the rules, like Miles Davis or Dogen. There's a lattice of support for the embodiment of awakening. The formality in the forms of the Zendo is one of the supports. Noble silence is another. The central pillar of support, guidance, and the activity of awakening are the 16 Bodhisattva precepts. My beloved friend, Byakuren Judith Regier, has written that the precepts are like a lattice on which roses can grow. The precepts are called the blood vein of our practice. We can receive these precepts in 3 different ceremonies that consolidate our intention to realize how to live in a good way, in a way that relieves suffering, and in a way that deeply understands and realizes the gift of the precepts and the insight of the Buddha. So the precepts are given in lay ordination, in priest ordination, and in transmission ceremonies. So in these ceremonies, we don't receive any special status. We receive the guidance of our ancestors. All of their research, effort, intention, and wisdom are distilled into the 16 Bodhisattva precepts. Now, what's this section? Oh, okay. It strikes me that Moses, having witnessed the confusion and ignorance of his people once he got them out of Egypt, he went up the mountain of Sinai twice, only to come down with what? What did he come down with? Not a crown of power. He came back with the 10 Commandments, which became the basis of Western culture and morality. In other words, the precepts. When I was growing up, my father often said, there is a right and there is a wrong. And this is wrong, or mostly, you are wrong. But the precepts are not based in this view. They're based in the view that Rumi, Persian poet, shows us in one of his poems. You probably know this short poem. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, excuse me, oh dear, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, and even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. So to me, it's on that kind of a view that the precepts are based. When I've been studying this 9 bodies training, and one of the things that we do at the beginning, and I've been offering this during Rohatsu, is we take these little vows of non-judging, non-comparing, and non-fixing. So that is a practical way to enter the field out beyond the idea of wrongdoing and right doing, I think. It's very helpful, very practical. The Buddha had, collected after time a community of monastics. And of course, it's hard for human beings to live in harmony with each other. So moral codes and rules of behavior had to be established. And those rules were interestingly very practical. They were based on real life issues that came up and had to be sorted out. An issue would be brought to the Buddha, and a rule would be established to take care of that difficulty so that it was not repeated, hopefully. And this code of behavioral rules was called the Vinaya. Vinaya. The original teachings of the Buddha were said to be held in 3 baskets. The 3 baskets, I love this because it's so visual. I can imagine a basket, you know. The baskets are called the Polycanon, or the Tripitaka. Tripitaka. I looked it up how to pronounce it because I've been pronouncing it wrong. The baskets were named the Vinaya, which is the smallest and oldest baskets, which had all the rules for governing the behavior of Buddhist monastics. The Sutta Pitaka, the sutras, and the Abhidharma Pitaka, Buddhist psychology. Originally, there were 227 total precepts for monks and 311 for nuns. When the Buddhist teachings left India and Southeast Asia for China and Japan, the Dharma began to be called the Mahayana, or the Great Vehicle, and the rules of the Vinaya were transformed into the 16 Bodhisattva precepts that we receive today. And of course, it was a little bit political, but I'm just going to say that. I'm not going to get into all the stories around that. But that's human life, So, Dogen Zenji, and we all know who Dogen Zenji is, so I don't have to talk about that. He studied the Tendai tradition in Japan, and he received only the Mahayana precepts. So he did not receive the Vinaya, and that's part of the political stuff. And he only gave the 16 Bodhisattva precepts, the Bodhisattva precepts that have been correctly transmitted by Buddhas and ancestors. Now, this is interesting. It's said that the Bodhisattva precepts were established as soon as the Buddha attained unsurpassable awakening, and even before he began to teach. So I kind of love that poetic space. The characteristic that's crucial for the 16 Bodhisattva precepts is that they're alive in both the relative and the absolute realms, and that we practice them in both realms. Otherwise, we'll be like my dad. There's a right and there's a wrong, and that's a wrong. So, but I want to also practice them like Rumi. So Dogen pointed this out at the very beginning of his fascicle, Kyoju Kaiman, Comments on Teaching and Conferring the Precepts, which is a great chapter. He said, receiving the precepts transcends the borders of past, present, and future. He said, the great precepts of the Buddhas have been upheld and maintained by the Buddha, Buddhas conferred them to Buddhas, and ancestors transmitted them to ancestors. So that sense of a lattice, support, a bloodline, what connects us to practitioners. When I asked to be ordained, sometime, when did I do that? 1998 or something like that. Dosho Port said, well, give me 3 reasons. I don't know if I'm going to remember the 3 right this second, but one of them was that I knew I could go deep, but I didn't want to go just anywhere. I wanted to follow a track that people had tried out already. And that included being supported by the precepts, I realized. Shohaku Okamura Roshi says, the 10 grave prohibitory precepts are the 10 ethical aspects of the Dharma to which the Buddha awakened. And this is the line that stood out to me. The basis of the Bodhisattva precepts is the reality of all beings to which the Buddha awakened. In other words, impermanence, egolessness, and the interdependent origination of all things. And Katagiri Roshi really emphasized codependent arising of all things. I think he might have said that in every lecture I heard. Well, I don't know every lecture, but a lot. Many lectures that I heard. When we awaken to the reality that we ourselves and all other things are impermanent and egoless, we see that we cannot cling to anything. This seeing part, it's not intellectual. I mean, there's nothing wrong with like trying to, cogitate and understand it intellectually. That's important because it gives a framework like to drop down into. But the real understanding is, oh, and it's over and over and over, so that the nervous system starts to make its point of reference differently. But that's not something we can control. So that's why practice. But not like practice, like practice. Oh, so like if I want to play the piano, I have to practice like I'm learning this music behind me. And I just have to go over it and over it and over it. And I go over it and then I go, oh, that passage is, oh no, it's like that. So it's just this repetition, really. And then the nervous system starts to change. When we awaken to the fact that each thing is interconnected to every other thing, like all the knots in Brahma's net, we see that Indra's net, what's Brahma's net doing in there? We see that we are supported by everything and live together with everything. We can exist only within relationship with others, the air, the sun, the rocks, the animals, the plants, and the oceans. So when we're writing Dharma talks, all kinds of things show up on my computer, and I go down many rabbit holes, which is really fun. And one of them showed me this cool term. It's a Zulu term. Ubuntu. Ubuntu. Oh, Edo, Ubuntu. It's a Nguni Bantu term meaning humanity. It's sometimes translated as I am because we are, or I am because you are, which is totally Zen. I love that. That is so cool. However, Oh, wait. The reality, that reality, I am because you are, is the source of the precepts. When we see the interconnectedness of all beings, we can only try to be helpful to them and avoid being harmful to them. However, and I love Suzuki Roshi for saying this, even if we pick up a speck of dust, it is trouble. So at the same time, no matter what we do, something's happening. So it's not a fairy story. Probably we come to practice Zazen because we become aware that we have suffering in our lives. Maybe that suffering is internal to us. Maybe it is what is in the world. And God knows there's so much threat to the very existence of life on the planet and so much heartbreaking conflict in so many places. I've been member of a group at Clouds and Water who's been practicing to dialogue how to practice with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And we've been meeting once a month for 2.5 hours each time since July, and we have one more meeting in November. So how do we lean into the space and hold it without easy answers or simplistic understandings? This is radical. It's challenging too. And it's in this space of precept practice and the practice of contrition and confession. So the gateway to the precepts is the vulnerability of confession. We can look around and we see these qualities, unwholesome qualities, the opposite of love and compassion, are running rampant. Overwhelming stress, fear, shame, blame, illness, death, war, loss, disappointment, hopelessness, authoritarian government. It is rough, it is harsh and frightening out here. And sometimes when that's going on, it's pretty hard to touch into the source of the lattice. So, exactly because things are so challenging and scary and uncomfortable, we are vulnerable. And that vulnerability may allow a natural movement to enter the gateway of precept practice. And that gateway is confession or contrition. We recite all my ancient twisted karma from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, born through body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow. Clear the way. You know what? It's a relief for me to chant this, to recite this, and to give up being good, being right, being anything at all. We live in and are a sea of fathomless causes and conditions. We together are bringing and cultivating the light of awareness. The light of awareness to conditions that make themselves known to us right here and now. Awareness receives all of it. I think that's love. Last week, I happened to be in New Jersey visiting my goofball grandsons, and I attended a wonderful Yom Kippur service. So in the Jewish liturgical year, Yom Kippur is a day of fasting and prayer, confession and contrition. And there's two parts of the service named the Vidui and the Al-Chet, which are recited in the plural to indicate that everyone shares infallibility and that forgiveness is available to all. So we recite this long list of actions in which the precepts were broken, and we read them out, and everyone does this, gently taps their chest with a soft fist for all of those actions, whether or not I particularly did that thing or not. but the community together supports each other and names them all because one of those things happen for sure. So I see the Zen confessional verse as a softening verse, as an accepting verse, not a beating up on myself verse. And having met myself as this verse, I need the trellis of the precepts. They are the rope holds on the swaying woven bridge over the swollen river gorge of samsaric life. And you know this famous quote. It's actually, I put it on not what am I trying to say? A sign right on my front yard, and it says, hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. This is the ancient and eternal law from the Dhammapada. I thought all my neighbors would want one, and I would give them one, but nobody asked me for one. So, having opened our hearts with the sincere act of contrition, we can now snuggle close to the three refuges, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And Byakuran has this, she retranslated them, and I really love hers. They're up here. Oh, there they are in my office. I take refuge in unconstructed reality. That's the Buddha. Dharma, I take refuge in the creative energies of life. Sangha, I take refuge in compassionately responsive relationships. Should I say those again? Her three translations. So the Buddha is, I take refuge in unconstructed reality. Dharma, I take refuge in the creative energies of life. Sangha, I take refuge in compassionately responsive relationships. And following on from this, we bring into our hearts the three pure precepts. Do good, don't do harm, save all living beings. After this, we have a lifetime to realize that we can never perfectly live into and out of the 10 grave prohibitory precepts, which are, I vow not to kill, I vow not to take what is not given, I vow not to misuse sexuality, I vow to refrain from false speech, I vow to refrain from intoxicants, I vow not to slander, I vow not to praise self at the expense of others, I vow not to be avaricious, I vow not to harbor ill will, I vow not to disparage the three treasures. Realizing the impossibility of perfection is something wonderful, I think. It leads us through the conventional understanding of these precepts. What should we do and what mustn't we do to the ultimate foundation of our bodhisattva vow as realized by the Buddha, which is now. Now what? What is happening? How is it happening? I think that it's very important to align our body, hearts, and minds with the Buddha's teaching. And here is how that can happen. So, alignment. First, we sit down and we arrive here and now, over and over, breath by breath. Then we make ourselves available to whatever is arising as the teaching of the moment. And we align with the Dharma, the creative and living teaching of the Buddha as it unfolds for us through our intention. We align with it, and it aligns us with reality. The great chiropractor is called practice. We turn the wheel and we are turned by it. For real. We can't just do this by self-power. It's not how it works. So here's a quote from the Buddha on Vulture Peak. I have the treasury of the true Dharma I, the sublime mind of nirvana, whose true sign is signlessness, the sublime Dharma gate, which, without words or phrases, is transmitted outside of the standard teachings, and which I bestow upon Mahakashapa, who held up the flower. So this is the treasury that's bestowed upon us as we live into the precepts. I don't know what else life is about. For me, I ask myself and you, and I'm going to come back to Joy Harjo to end. Watch your mind. Without training, it might run away and leave your heart for the immense feast set by the thieves of time. Well, that's all I have to say. And I'd love to hear what you have to say, if anything, or, questions too, or things you want to say. Or that you're thinking about. Edo-san?
Thank you, Myo-O. I really appreciate your talk today, and I want to say that I recently also discovered that word, Ubuntu, and I actually mentioned it in a talk that at MCMC. Anyway, I'm very excited about that word and that concept, and that other people know about it. And the context in which I saw this at first, now I see it lots of places, but when I first read about it, it was a story about a journalist who was interviewing some kids in Africa, and he told them that he put a basket of treats over there, and he said that they could race, and whoever got there first would get the treat. And they joined hands and all went there and encircled the treat and shared it. And then he asked, why did they do this instead of just running there and trying to win? And they used this term because of Ubuntu. And then they tried to explain to him what this was, that they couldn't possibly have any joy in winning something if everyone else was losing. That was just not even a consideration in their minds. Part of what I thought was fascinating about this was that these kids were raised in this way from the beginning of their lives and embodied this without any sort of thought or conception or putting it in any hole or religion or anything like that. It's like, wow, they knew the truth. Anyway, I love that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ado. That is a beautiful, beautiful story. It's gonna stay in here.
Hello, Myo-O. My name is Kim. I'm at Hokyoji, so it says
Oh,
Hokyoji.
wonderful.
Yeah. Nice to see you.
To see you.
Yeah, thank you for your talk. It's really beautiful. And I'm envisioning the service of Yom Kippur. This really, yeah, it's really, yeah, I feel like I could do that my whole life, truthfully, right? Just like all of us, just, yeah. But what it brought to mind was I learned to chant the chants in service. And now this is what our Sangha does. where we start with the I, and then we say it with a we, and then we say it with from the absolute realm. So it's like I vow, we vow, the vow. And every chant is done that way. And there's really something that it supports in my practice of not getting so stuck and feeling alone. Yeah, feeling alone, right? I think so often, like I know I'm off track if I feel alone. Like there is just something there. And to hold the collective and then to know we're held as well, that the vow is, it is always like we're just waking up into it. We're there's kind of no way to not be on the path. So anyway, that's what that's one of the things that came to mind as you were talking. And yeah, I really appreciate you and I appreciate your teaching. So thank you.
Kim, thank you so much. Thank you.
Let me ask you a question, Myo-O. Can you hear me okay? Okay. You might remember that I'm a recently retired president from the SCBA. Okay. And I was on that board for 6 years, 4 as treasurer and 2 as president. And one of the probably biggest issues we dealt with over those 6 years is ethics. And we eventually approved a document saying a code of ethics and then also a grievance procedure. What I thought I would mention is that when we were working through that, we had an attorney working with us, and that person said the 16 bodhisattva precepts are not enough. Because many people, when we are presenting an ethics policy by which the members should live by, some people will say, I don't need that. I have the 16 precepts, bodhisattva precepts. So the attorney basically says that you got to spell those things out to some degree or another, and or call it what it is exact. You just can't say won't misuse sexuality or something like that. Well, you got to say what that is exactly. Anyway, so I just bring that up, and well, it reminded me of the Vinaya, or because they spell things out there, pretty explicitly. I thought I'd bring up 3 kind of cases from the Vinaya. Also, this attorney who I was previously talking about, said like the ethics policy is like a high bar place. The legal law is low. In other words, this is what you cannot do or you're going to go to jail or something like that. That's not the level that we want to work with. So anyway, here's the, I'll give you 3 examples from the Vinaya. And they like push it to the extreme. That's what I'll say it, how I'll say it. So here's the example of, and there were 5 precepts. If you broke, it would be, if it was determined that you did it, you would be ejected from the Sangha and never be able to come back. And the one is, so here's the one about killing somebody. A group of some robbers, some thieves were, kind of beating up a monk or, hitting him or trying to get whatever he has. I don't think he has much, but in the event, they're doing that. And the monk pushed one of the people away, and he tripped, and his head hit a stone, and he died. So that was cause for immediate expulsion because he killed somebody. But it's like, wait a minute. So anyway, that's that one. I'll give the example for stealing is I even like it better. It's it's like somebody left something and you forgot about it, just left it somewhere and forgot that it was there, at least for, a significant period of time, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And a monk would walk by and just see it there all the time. And after a month, the monk said, I think no one's going to come back for that. So he took it. I don't know what it was. So then all of a sudden the other person remembered, oh, they left their thing over there. So they went back and tried to find it and said, oh, one of your monks stole my whatever. So that's the example from stealing. So like you say, it's a pretty high bar. And then there's I won't go into the one with sex, but it's kind of similar, just really, really on the edge. And then I think there's another one. I think there's 5 actions that you can be expelled from the Sangha and never be able to come back. And I can't remember number 4, but number 5, I believe, is creating a schism in the Sangha. So anyway, those are my comments. I just thought I'd bring them up. I was reminded of those things while you were speaking. So thank you.
I want to say I don't know how this sign got on my.
I'm sorry.
There was a finger doing this on my screen that spontaneously arose. I didn't.
Oh, okay. I thought you didn't have a question about my comment. Okay.
No.
Okay. All right. Good. I don't know. Okay. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Okay.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Was there a question in your comment? You said you wanted to ask me a question.
Oh, well, I was gonna I guess in the beginning, I thought, what do you think about this? Are the 16 precepts enough or not?
Oh, big question, right? Because the 16 Bodhisattva precepts don't exist in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
They exist in a context, which is, let's just say the state of Minnesota, the country of United States, the culture that's around us. So we can't say. In one sense, you could say I could say it is enough, but in another sense, no, it's not enough. If I want to send someone to jail, I have to do some other stuff, some other things. So
Okay. Reminds me of the koan, alive or dead.
I know. I won't say. I won't
Enough
say.
or not enough? I
I
won't say.
won't say.
Okay. Thank you, Myo-O. We have a few more minutes left if anyone else wants to pursue this dialogue further.
Mary, hi.
Thank you for your Dharma talk, and Dokai, thank you for your comments, and PB, thank you. I really appreciate it. I always learn a lot, and my orientation to the world, every time I can listen to people who know the Dharma, much better than I do, reorients my mind and my heart. So I really appreciate this time, and I think Aaron a couple weeks ago said that this is sort of like a study group in a way. This Sunday morning Dharma talk, and it truly is for me. So I struggle with this. Growing up, my heritage is Catholicism. So I'm very, very much steeped in my cells, deeply in my religious heritage, the do's and the don'ts, and the 10 Commandments, and the very rigid, this is wrong and this is right, but it's more of a striving always to be good, but you never quite get there. But this observation I've made, and there is a question here, and I've asked this before, but here the idea of the monks, already people that are in the Sangha, I mean, following this whole lifestyle of following the Buddha, kind of already trying to do that. And then there's all this tension, and of course it's humans, and people are going to sin or whatever. They're not going to find it. There's sort of there's this question about that I have, like, where does that translate into historically into the larger society? Was society basically just like the Buddha, or the trajectory of the rules and all of that for the monks? Was that put together for the monks, and then the rest of society, it's like, well, forget those people. They're we're all they're already in a environment where it's reinforced over and over, these rules. That's the society. So I'm kind of disheartened sometimes. And because how could the rest of society, and today it's just like a losing battle for humans to even, I don't know, come together and just be decent. I mean, it's just, I have a very, and clearly our society now, we're struggling. I mean, and then laws, ethics, it's quite disheartening. So you're kind of safe in a group sometimes, like in a Sangha. I don't know if I'm even making any sense. And I know we can only control ourselves, but this, I don't know, I'm sorry. How does society of humans manage to even, get along? I mean, it's really looking not good for humanity, for Homo sapiens. And that's kind of something that's sort of always kind of underlined for me. And I'm not generally a pessimistic person. Does that make any sense? Anyway, I don't know. Sometimes I just feel like yeah.
So Mary, uh, I, I, I don't think you're alone. I don't think you're alone in noticing this. I'm guessing. I'm guessing. And not just everybody on this call, but there's a fourplex next door to me. The other day, one of my neighbors who lives in the fourplex, we were just saying hi over the fence and garden consulting. And she said, just kind of ad hoc, she just said, doesn't it seem like everybody is so stressed out all the time? And I said, yeah, sure. I mean, I was so glad that she could say that, right? It was kind of like piercing the veil, to say, yeah, it sure does feel that way. Especially this fall with the narratives that are flying around and the election coming up and all that. So that's all we said. We just pierced the veil and said, oh my God, because that's kind of what I'm hearing you say. So maybe, anybody on this call has a lot of wisdom about how we're all working with, addressing, coping, practicing with how it is. And I sure don't have any like pith phrase of the perfect wisdom. Like, oh, well, this is what we should do. So on the one hand, I might say, just don't know, but that just don't know is paying close attention and constantly, like what's happening? Oh, I'm getting all riled up. Is this helpful? No. Okay, what can I actually do? What is something, then there's that. Like, okay, what can I do internally, externally, action in the world if that's a gift I have, like, so when I say I don't know, I mean I don't know the perfect answer to your cry in the wilderness, which I share. And maybe someone else on this call has a much better response. So I wish I could tell you every little thing is gonna be all right. I love that song. I don't know. I don't know. What do the wise people say? Because this has happened before. And everyone on this call is one of the wise people. Ado, are you thinking? Or you want to say something? Yay. Let's listen to Ado.
I don't have the answer or any advice. But my internal response was kind of interesting in that recently I've been noticing and been more aware of the opposite, and primarily in one-to-one encounters with people, particularly strangers. Like yesterday, I was at Target returning something, and the young man who was helping me was extended himself so much. He said, "Don't hurry. I don't want the customer to feel rushed. We were, in this transaction." He said, "It's really important that that you don't feel like you're waiting for me. Anyway, he offered all this unnecessary reassurance. And I was so impressed. I thought, wow, where did that come from? In other words, and it was like I was so moved and inspired. And it's almost like this happens a lot, actually, particularly in one-to-one interactions with strangers, especially if they're particularly in stores, like the people who are helping you in the store. And of course, I realize this is their job, but it's not just their job. They don't need to go the extra mile. And often people do. And it's almost like with the bigger picture, things don't look so good. Or with strangers, we can think that of all the bad things that are happening. But then when we run into an individual who is so gracious and so generous and so compassionate, it's like kind of miraculous. And I feel very grateful. And I actually have more faith in humanity, you might say, when I experience this, like more hopeful. On the other hand, also this week, my son scooter was stolen from his workplace. So that's the other side, like, why would a stranger do something? The person who stole it can't even ride it because he doesn't have a key. So, so what's the point? The point was simply to do something that was going to, hurt somebody else. That was the whole point. And so there's that side too, like, why and how does that happen when there's this nice clerk over at Target who, who is so generous? How can there be somebody out there who would steal something for no reason except to steal it? Anyway, it's those are my experiences. That's all. I don't have any answers.
I think we've reached the end of our time for today, so I'd like to close this session. Let's see. Oh, announcements. So next week, Ado Phoebe Reinhardt is speaking, who's with us today. And the week after that is...
I think it's 2 weeks, isn't it?
Is it 2 weeks? Oh, okay. I could have gotten... Oh, yes, you're right. Next week, I can't read my writing. Next week is Kyoku. And then the week after that is Ado. And then Mushin Darin, who I think works with Onru Kennedy, is giving a talk. And then Onru Kennedy, GD, and then the next one is Kato Jeremy, Papan. So those are our speakers for the next 5 weeks. And our events, we're just finishing a work weekend. This is kind of a very nice time together, nice weather. We have a just sitting retreat that begins on Tuesday, but that's filled up. And a practicing the practicing the ways with GD and Patrice Kolish. You know her?
Kelch. Yeah, Patrice Kelch.
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 Okay. And then Rohatsu in December, starting December 2nd, and that's led by Myo-O and also Kyoku. And a few of our people are out working today, so we because of we're cleaning up the highway, doing our job. So, okay, and then we'll close with the 4 vows. Okay. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and have a nice week, and we'll see you later. I hope.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.